As you can see, we have a new background. Okay, I was getting bored, shit was looking tacky, I just wanted a bit of a change, and this is what I came up with, okay? Hey, it's Mel, I hope you're doing well and welcome back to my channel. If you're new, it's lovely to have you here. Today we're going to be looking at the dark history of the adoption agency Louise Weiss Services. Now, this adoption agency no longer exists. It shut down in 2004 and was located in New York. We're going to be looking at a few different cases of children who were adopted from this agency. This case is insane and it was so heartbreaking to research this shit. Like, it's just mind-blowing. There's a lot to cover, so let's get into it. The Jewish adoption agency Louise Weiss Services was founded in 1916 by Louise Waterman Weiss. It shut down in 2004 and was located in New York. 2 documentaries were made about the agency. One was called 3 Identical Strangers from 2018. The other is called The Twinning Reaction from 2017. Side note here, for those of you who don't know, I am a twin myself. I have a twin brother, though we do not get along, and twins sort of run in both sides of my family. Louise Weiss Services was responsible for separating twins and even triplets at birth and studying them in the name of science. This went on for years and we're not sure exactly how many twins were involved in this study, but it's believed that 11 were involved. And it all began in the 1960s. These children were a part of an experiment called the Newbar Twin Study that was led by psychiatrist Dr. Peter Newbar. He's basically the villain in this story. He is a horrible man. He died in 2008. He was pretty much playing God, separating twins at birth and studying their development over the years. He had his own research team and he was pretty much responsible for everything. The National Institute of Health funded this study and it also got some approval from different organisations. Some people actually supported Neubauer and had a lot of faith in this study. They thought it was a good idea. I don't know why. All of the adoptions were managed by Louise Weiss Services, which provided Neubauer with access to children, both triplets and twins. To Neubauer, it was a question of nature versus nurture. With help from the agency, Neubauer and his research team separated twins at birth and studied and watched their development over the years. They even did home visits quite often and would record the children playing. They did various tests on them, which became more complex as they grew older. The documentary 3 Identical Strangers talks about a set of triplets who reunited at age 19 after they were separated at 6 months old. They reunited in 1980. The triplets shared a lot of similarities, obviously, and they also grew up in a house with an older adoptive sister. The triplets at the time had no idea that they were a part of a sick experiment. Each child was placed in a different home of lower, middle and upper class. The research team would often do house visits to each child and they knew full well where each child lived. Now bear in mind that each child was placed in a different home but all lived in New York, right? The research team knew this. They knew exactly what they were doing. They placed the children in homes of different class families to see how they would adapt. This is so sick. It would usually be a young woman and a man who would visit the home and, study the children and even record them playing, like throwing a ball, riding the bike, really simple things. The triplets grew up, each loving their adoptive family. However, the adoptive families had no idea what was actually going on. The research team told the families that their child was going to be a part of a basic child development study, which was a lie. The parents at the time accepted this. But they had no idea the true intentions of the research team or the fact that there were 2 other babies out there. They had no idea that the 3 boys had been separated. They were all lied to. Most of the twins in this experiment suffered trauma. The triplets of the documentary 3 Identical Strangers are called Bobby Shafran, David Kelman and Eddie Galland, who sadly due to years of manic depression ended his life in 1995. Each child felt incomplete growing up. Like I said, each child suffered trauma growing up. As a baby, David would smack his head against his cot, while Bobby suffered separation anxiety. He would cry a lot as a child. Their childhood was pretty much stripped away from them. In the documentary Three Identical Strangers, Bobby actually calls Neubauer a Nazi, in reference to Nazi Dr. Joseph Mengele, who carried out horrific experiments on twins. The study began long before the rules of informed consent were introduced to the US by the National Research Act of 1974. So the agency didn't tell the biological parents anything and lied to the adoptive parents. This made a nice little loophole for them. They were able to get away with this. Now let's look at the stories of each twin and see how the study affected them. It turns out that most of the twins' biological parents suffered mental illness, anywhere from depression to schizophrenia. The agency were very specific with where they placed each child. Let's take a look at the triplet story. The triplet story is very unique and it actually made them in the 1980s very famous. Eddie, Bobby and David were born on the 12th of July 1961 in New York and were put in the hands of Louise Wise Services, who separated them at birth, 6 months old to be exact, and were reunited after 19 years. As previously mentioned, each child was placed in a lower, middle and upper class family. The researchers, every time they came to the house, they would video the children playing, do various mind tests, which became more complex as they grew older, and David Kellman actually said in the documentary, at age 10, he asked his mother, "Do I really have to do this again?" Like, as the children grew older, they became more uncomfortable with these strange people coming to the house and doing these tests on them, IQ, personality tests, hand coordination tests, they would do ink block tests, and as grown adults finding out this information that they were a part of an experiment, the triplets were pissed off, understandably. There was clues of the triplets being a part of an experiment. There would be things they'd remember as children. David, Bobby and Eddie all remember people coming to the house and doing various tests on them. Eddie remembered people watching him play and taking notes. They would ask him various questions. When the triplets were each adopted, the parents were told that their child was being followed, as part of a normal study of the development of adoptive children. After the triplets reunited in 1980 and the adoptive families all came together and they found out about this, that the boys had been separated as part of an experiment, they were furious, understandably. They felt lied to and played. One rainy day, the parents all came together and visited the office of Louise Wise Services and entered the room to talk with the agency people. The parents wanted answers as to why the boys had been separated at birth and why they were not told about this. The agency's excuse or reasoning for doing this is because they claimed they would have a hard time finding a family that would take in 3 boys, which obviously this is the 1960s. But that's total bullshit and an absolute lie, by the way. After this conversation, the parents left the office of Louise Wise Services and they were all furious that this had even happened, how they got away with it for so long. When the parents left the office that rainy day, as they were leaving the building and they were walking outside, I'm pretty sure it was Bobby's father who forgot his umbrella. He had left it behind in the office, so he went back to get it. Now, when he entered the room to get his umbrella, he saw all of the agency people crowded around a table, opening up a bottle of champagne, celebrating as if they had just gotten away with something. The triplets were within a 100-mile radius of each other home-wise, meaning that over the years, this research team would visit one child, do the tests, video them, and then move on an hour later and go visit another child. Their biological mother suffered with depression, which most likely passed on to Eddie. Due to suffering years with manic depression, Eddie sadly ended his life in 1995. He was a father, he had a wife, and he was described as being a very funny and lovable, kind person, which a lot of people believe that the experiment and knowing that he was a part of it led to his death. I don't know if that's actually true, but it wouldn't surprise me. The triplets' teenage years were really dysfunctional. They all spent some time in psychiatric care. Most twins who were a part of this study, they too had extremely dysfunctional teenage years. Twin sisters Elsie Shine and Paula Beinstein. were a part of the experiment and both suffered depression. Their biological mother also had schizophrenia. Most twins in this study had mental health issues. The question is, were those scientists purposefully choosing children whose biological parents had mental health and placing them in different homes to see, is mental health heritable? The documents or results of this study have never been released. They're sealed until the year 2066 at Yale University Library. It seems like the study ended in 1981, shortly after the triplets reunited. Neubauer, his research team, the agency, they were able to get away with this for years. Because the documents are sealed, no one knows the purpose of this study. David Kellman, one of the triplets, has tried to get his hands on it, but so far, to my knowledge, he's been unsuccessful. Twin testing and separation has gone on for years, not just with Louise Wide Services. Thanks to the documentary Three Identical Strangers, two twin sisters were able to find each other after 54 years. Alison Cantor and Michelle Morkoff were separated at birth and found each other after taking a DNA test. They were adopted by different families in October 1964. Neither family knew that their 5-month-old daughter had a twin. After watching the documentary, Michelle took a DNA test, and weeks later she found out she had a twin. The girls were adopted 2 days apart. Both lived in New York. They reunited on the 10th of August 2018. Ellen Carbone and Melaine Mertzel met each other after 23 years. They too were a part of this experiment and remember strange people coming to their homes and doing tests on them. Doug Reich and Howard Buck, twin brothers who actually reunited in an airport in Columbus, Ohio, they too were a part of the experiment and remember people coming to the house. And they got in contact in 2000. They met each other at the age of 35. Growing up, they were very stressful children, almost like they had anxiety. They want justice like so many others who were involved in the study. Louise Wide Services was shut down in 2004 and it no longer exists. Thank God. That agency, Neubauer and his research team, they're all responsible for separating twins at birth and studying them over the years. That has such an impact on a child. Like, it's just disgusting what they've done. The documents of this study remain sealed until 2066, so we will never know the results of this study or what the purpose of it was. And by that point, all of the twins and the triplets who were involved in the study will either be too old or dead. My mind is blown at the fact that people are capable of doing this. That's all for today. That was the disgusting and dark history of Louise Wide Services Adoption Agency and also the Neubauer twin study. Feel free to leave a comment below what your thoughts or opinions are on this. I'm going to leave my Instagram link down below if you want to go and follow me. Also, I do a lot of unsolved mysteries, a lot of true crime, reincarnation cases, conspiracy theories, a bit of random videos here and there. If any of that sounds interesting to you, then maybe consider subscribing, I don't know. As always, thanks for watching, take care, bye.